Welcome to the Rome Reporter segment of Impact. This week we're discussing the Zimmerman verdict and its cultural implication on African Americans and the nation as a whole with Dr. Deidre Hill-Butler, Director of Africana Studies at Union College. Dr. Butler, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's great having you back here to discuss such an important issue that's arising in our nation right now.
Right.
You know, our country as a whole, but specifically the African American culture, are really much hurting right now.
Right.
We are hurting. I can personally say that I'm hurting because of this verdict.
Right.
And we're here to discuss, what does this look like from a cultural standpoint, and how do we move on from here?
It's interesting because culture is not stagnant. It's connected with history, and it's connected with feelings and context. And I am saddened by the verdict, but I'm not surprised, given the history of how African Americans have been treated and portrayed in American society, in particular young black men. And sadly, there's a history of the mistreatment of black men. And the issue that comes really to the forefront right now is how black men, young black men particularly, are thought of as suspect and devalued.
Yes.
And the case just symbolizes that in regards to why that stand your ground law is even on the books and how it's been used in regards to making sure social order is kept in a way that continually makes or allows for boys and young men to be seen as less than.
Yeah.
I constantly think if George Zimmerman had not gotten out of that car, Trayvon would be alive today.
Yes.
And for him to think in his neighborhood watch situation that he had to really target and profile young black men, thinking they were constantly going to be lawless.
Yes. Yes.
If that wasn't his premeditated idea. But the law protected that standpoint. Right? So the verdict just reflects what the law is. So I'm not angry at the jury or anything like that, the process of the trial, because the law is flawed in that way.
Yeah.
But laws reflect attitudes and judgments of the citizenship, and citizenship who are empowered to make law.
Now, I want to talk about this clip that we're going to be playing right now from President Obama's speech, because I thought it was such a profound speech of how here you have an African American president who can put himself in the shoes of this young man. And one of the things that he said profoundly says that we are viewing this matter through a set of past experiences.
When you think about why, in the African American community at least, there's a lot of pain around what happened here. I think it's important to recognize that the African American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that doesn't go away.
That is why so many of us in the African American culture are hurting, because here again we feel as though this is another slap in the face. And there have been comparisons made to Emmett Till.
Right.
And I've talked with people who can conjure up issues from the past of how their life may have ended up just like this young man's.
Right.
I
mean, for a context of Emmett Till, he was from Chicago, he was visiting family in Mississippi, and he didn't understand the codes and ways of Mississippi in regards to what it was thought to be how young people, or blacks in particular, were supposed to speak to whites. And the legend is that he whistled at a white woman, and because of that he broke a code, a social code, and he was hunted and lynched for doing that. But his mother had the strength to say, I'm going to inform the world about this mistreatment of my son. This isn't going to be silenced.
Yes.
And it's very similar to how the Trayvon Martin's parents have been very dignified in talking about and discussing the pain they're going through with their son in regards to the abuse and the assassination of their son.
And it's a representative of so many African American boys who have paid for these profiling issues with blood.
Right. I mean, when you think about the history context, we've gone through so many social movements, civil rights and Black Power movement and struggles for quote unquote freedom. So the slap in the face is we've come so far, and then this is just a reminder that we have so much further to go in regards to working towards feeling like we are full citizens. And that's where the pain comes from, because there's been such a struggle, and there's constantly a struggle.
So my question to you is, how have the African American culture fallen asleep? In the 60s and in the 70s, we were together, we were united, we fought for our rights, and it seems like here we are in 2013, and another generation has arisen, and they don't know, number one, their history. They don't have the full identity that the people in the 60s had of community, of togetherness. And is that part of the issue here, do you think?
It's part of the issue, but what's happened since the Trayvon Martin incident, there's been galvanizing, there's been conversation, intergenerational conversation. Elders are talking to the youth about their experiences, about their pain, and I think we're listening to young people as well, because they're at the rallies, they're blogging, they're sending text messages and discussing this. It's not just a one-way conversation about injustice. So I think we can glorify the past. I know there were divisions and strife, even in the midst of social change in the past, but I think we're in the throes of more conversations now. I also think there'll be more acknowledgement about religious spaces, community centers, politicians, bringing these topics up in regards to race in particular.
Because I'm glad you tapped on politics, because one of the things that President Obama said, he said, we're not looking for a conversation that's political. Because most of the time when you come into political conversation, you stand your ground, basically. But
ironic.
It's taking it to exactly stand your ground. You know,
right?
We stand our ground.
Yes.
But when we take it to a community, I mean, I personally was sitting in a group of mixed people, and we were discussing it, and I was surprised because my target was towards the African American people to say it's time that we wake up and become more conscious and teach our young people the history of who we are, so they understand who they are in situation, in culture, in community. And I was surprised to see that my white friends were agreeing with me to say, you know, it's not just a call to your community, it's also a call to my community to say, we need to wake up and we need to stop making certain choices also. And I was surprised at that. I was truly surprised, and I was glad that, you know, the voice was, they were saying it.
Surprised and encouraged, because that means there's spaces for more dialogue, and it's not just a one-way conversation of Black folks saying, listen to us, we feel dispossessed, we are enraged. There seems to be some space. I mean, for so much attention to be put on mainstream media in regards to this case, at least there's spaces for this. Now, the next thing, it's great that we can talk, but what are the actual moves that are going to take place? Are school curriculums going to be more inclusive? Are we going to really address our judicial system and the inequalities there? Are we going to deal with larger sustaining issues of joblessness and housing discrimination and healthcare disparities? I mean, there's so many layers to this that I think will open up the door for, discussion, but we actually need to make some social change.
I think so. I think when we have these incidents, it pulls us to look at the past and to open up the wounds of the present to say, okay, we can't just cover it up, because there are people who say, let's just move on. You know, like, you know, and I'm afraid to say that this is a typical mentality for many Americans when situations happen. Okay, what's the best way for us to move on? You know, if there's a bombing, let's just have a united front for a couple of minutes and then just move on. And I don't think this is a situation where we necessarily must move on quickly, but we need to have conscious conversations and also plan of action and then take the action.
And follow through. I agree with that. And race has always been like the taboo subject, right? But it's right in our face. And it was so blatant in regards to these interviews with the jurors that have come out in the past week or so. They were like, oh, race has nothing to do with it. It's the major issue
This
of
is why, this
the
is
man
why.
would not have gotten out of the car if he did not see a black boy
Exactly.
or a black young man walking. So we need to take the time, like you said. I agree with that. Take the time, have the discussions, understand there's pain there, and the pain is felt by many. We have many allies in dealing with the topics of race, and then we need to move towards what are we going to deal with in regards to policies and shifting and changing institutions that have been so historically unequal in the treatment of certain groups of people.
And I think the key thing for our community to understand is we have to make our voices heard.
Yes.
And you make your voices heard by registering to be voted,
Yes.
by blogging, there's so many medias that we can, even in our school system, we talk about curriculum. Where is the African American in the curriculum?
Right.
Where is the history of us? Because when you know your history and you have your identity, no one can take that from you.
Right. And
when
not just African Americans should learn that. Everyone should learn that.
Yes.
Because it's the American story.
It is.
Without the presence and contributions of people of African descent, working people, immigrants, you wouldn't have this country. So that needs to be at the base and it needs to be at the center of the educational process.
Yes.
But it takes work because citizens have to step up and be part of the process.
And I'm glad you said citizen because we always look to the system, but we are part of the system
Right.
as citizens.
Right.
And we have a very profound voice,
Right.
To choose the people who are going to be representing us in elections, to come out not only to the big elections, but the small ones to get registered,
Right. Right.
and to have your voices be heard.
Right. Right.
I think it's so important.
So, I mean, it mirrors dealing with and coping through this pain with this incident, how it brings up. Sad that this is an example that we had to go through, but it's bringing up conversations and dialogues that's important. The next step is for all of us to get involved, hear each other in the midst of this pain, but then also say, what can we do? How can we change our society so everyone is really appreciated? Each person is appreciated for the human being that they are, the contributions that they make, and the potential that they have. Yeah. And it's so sad that Trayvon was struck down so early. It's even more troubling that so many others have died since he's been killed, and the injustices within that judicial system are still thriving.
Yes. So we do have much work to be done.
Much work to be done.
Okay. Well, are you going to be speaking any more places regarding this issue? I got to
always ask. None right now. We have, this is a summer break for me.
Okay.
And there are conversations in local churches and civic situations. So yes, I will let you know the next time I have a speaking gig.
I'm like you, I want the conversation to keep on going.
Thank you.
I think it's such an important issue that we must have it, and we must have it ongoing in our community, in our culture, for our nation, because where America goes, the world follows.
This is true.
And this incident, this situation, this case has been profiled throughout the world. And we don't realize that. We look at it from a community standpoint, we look from it from a national standpoint, but it also has world implications.
It reverberates around the world. You're true. That's true. And so it brings out discussions that we should continue to have.
Yes, because this is not a country of two races. This is a country of many races.
Exactly.
The world is here.
This is true.
Yes.
This is true.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Have had a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
And I just hope that you will continue to have it wherever you can. I know this is your summer break and I'm
It's definitely in the classroom. And looking forward to seeing what my students have to say about this.
Wonderful. Dr. Butler, it's always a pleasure having you
Thank
on
you.
the show.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching the Roving Reporter segment of Impact. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.